The events of the series begin in the year 2000 in a poor neighborhood in the United States, where we are introduced to a homeless girl named Eliza, who lives in a tent with her boyfriend David. Eliza goes shopping at a nearby store, and through this we discover that she deals in illegal substances to support herself. On her way back to the tent, a red car stops in front of her. She assumes the driver wants to buy drugs, so she gets into the car to make a sale. But to her surprise, the driver locks the doors and kidnaps her. The scene then shifts to a detective named Mickey, who is dropping off her young son Thomas at school. She is visibly frustrated due to the high school fees she can't afford. Unfortunately, her ex-husband Simon refuses to help, claiming he used to cover the expenses in the past, and it's now her turn to take responsibility. After dropping Thomas off, Mickey heads to the police station to continue her work with her colleague Lafferty, though she appears uncomfortable working with him. She prefers to work alone and doesn't like having partners. She shows her deep knowledge of the poor neighborhood, its conditions, and the drug dealers there. Furthermore, she parks her car next to a homeless girl named Nicole and gets out to help treat her injured foot. She then talks to Lafferty and tells him that she knows all the homeless people in the city and tries to befriend them so they'll provide her with information about drug dealers. She also tells him about her former partner, Iron, who was injured and left the force, and since then she has preferred to work alone for fear of her colleagues getting hurt. Through her conversation, it seems she is hiding something from Lafferty. While they are talking, they receive a report about a nearby body. They rush to the scene and find the body of a woman in her 20s with red hair. Mickey is shocked when she sees the body and initially thinks it is her sister Casey, who struggles with addiction and has the same hair color. However, she hides her suspicions from her fellow officers for fear that they might arrest her sister. After examination, she finds out the body isn't Casey's, and she feels somewhat relieved. Meanwhile, Lafferty speaks to a homeless man and asks if he saw the perpetrator, but the man denies seeing anything. The body is then sent to the medical examiner. Mickey then goes to her boss and asks to be assigned to the case. After work, she returns home with her son Thomas, where she meets her neighbor Maine, who tells her that a man came asking about her earlier. Mickey assumes the man is her ex-husband Simon. She thanks her neighbor and goes inside. That evening, Mickey plays a musical instrument with great skill, revealing her musical talent. While playing, she hears a car stop outside her house. She looks out the window and sees a red car, thinking it belongs to Simon. She quickly locks the door, making it clear that she dislikes him and doesn't want to see him. The next day at the police station, Detective Kevin informs his colleagues that 2 more girls have died from drug overdoses, suggesting that a new, potent drug has hit the streets, leading to increased deaths. He proposes that the detectives go to the poor neighborhood and evict the homeless living in it to prevent further use of the substance. At this point, we learn that Casey, Mickey's sister, lives in that area. Mickey speaks with Kevin and tells him she suspects the victims didn't die of overdoses, but were deliberately killed. David then tells her that one of the victims' names is Elizabeth, the girl we saw at the beginning of the series, and that her boyfriend is named David. It is revealed that David had reported her missing days before her body was found, which supports the theory that she was indeed murdered. Mickey leaves him and heads to the forensic lab, where the doctor, Aaron, informs her that the girls died from an excessive dose of insulin. Mickey is shocked and recalls an incident from 2017 when she found her sister Casey unconscious in a supermarket due to a drug overdose. Back then, she arrested her and took her in a police car. On the way, she asked her partner Iron to release her because she was her sister, explaining that she had tried many times to get her clean, but failed. In the present, Mickey goes to the poor neighborhood to question David and asks him why his girlfriend disappeared before her death. He tells her he knows nothing. She then shows him a picture of her sister Casey and asks if he's seen her, as she is missing. He denies knowing or having seen her before. After the interrogation, Mickey goes to her colleague Lafferty and during their conversation, she spots Paul, one of Casey's friends. She tries to talk to her to find out her sister's whereabouts, but Paul refuses and walks away. Later, Mickey goes to a local store and meets the owner, Alonzo, asking him to contact her if he sees her sister or Paul. She then goes to her ex-husband Simon's house and sees him living his life normally. She notices that he has bought a new blue car, which surprises her because she thought his car was red. When she returns home, she asks her neighbor about the man who had asked about her earlier. The neighbor tells her that he was driving a red car, which shocks Mickey, as she had assumed it was Simon who came asking for her. At that moment, she begins to suspect that someone is watching her and trying to get rid of her. The next day, Mickey visits Dr. Aaron, and at the morgue, she sees the family of one of the girls who died from an insulin overdose. She learns that the girl's name was Luna and that she had run away from her family 2 years ago. That evening, Alonzo, the supermarket owner, calls Mickey and tells her that Paul has just left the store. Mickey rushes over and manages to talk to Paul, asking her about Casey's whereabouts. Paul tells her that Casey has been missing for a month and that no one knows anything about her. She specifies the date and time Casey disappeared and says she vanished after getting into a car with an unknown person. Mickey then hurries into the supermarket to review the surveillance footage from the day her sister disappeared. She is shocked to see her sister getting into a red car, the same red car she had seen before. Mickey becomes anxious and begins to suspect that the unknown person is the killer. She rushes home, grabs her son Thomas and leaves, feeling that she's in danger. She heads to the home of her former colleague Truman and tells him she needs his help. At that same time, her sister Casey is shown unconscious and lying in a grave in a strange house. Back with Mickey and Truman, she apologizes for not staying in touch since his injury. She asks if she and her son can stay at his place, as she fears the man in the red car. He agrees, and Mickey goes to sleep. She then recalls memories with her sister Casey, showing the deep love she has for her and her repeated efforts to help her quit drugs, but she failed, as Casey was too far gone into addiction. One time, Casey stayed the night at Mickey's house, only to steal a necklace Mickey inherited from their mother and sell it to buy drugs. We also learn that her ex-husband Simon is a police detective and never liked Casey, believing Mickey wasted her life and money trying to help her sister with no success. When Mickey wakes up, she sees her son Thomas happily preparing breakfast with Truman, and she realizes how much Thomas misses having a father in his life, especially after the divorce, as Simon was never preset. Meanwhile, all of Thomas's friends at school spend time with their dads. 2 weeks later, Mickey is still staying at Truman's house. She tells him she urgently needs to find her sister, who has been missing for a month and a half. Truman reassures her and promises to help. Mickey then goes to work, where she meets Detective Davis, who turns out to be the one assigned to investigate the deaths of the 3 girls who overdosed on insulin. He shares her suspicion that the girls were murdered and that someone unknown is behind it. Mickey tells him that homeless people in the poor neighborhood said the 3 girls were last seen getting into a red car with an unknown man. Davis thanks her and says he will open an investigation into the red car. At that moment, Mickey decides to go to the airport after discovering that 2 of the 3 victims had tissues from a local airline with them. On her way to the airport, she receives a report about a man assaulting his wife and daughters. She heads immediately to the address, where she discovers that the assaulted woman is an old friend from her school days. However, the woman denies any violence occurred, insists her husband didn't hit her, and claims she never made a report. Mickey returns home and discovers that her colleague Truman has installed an alarm system and surveillance cameras to protect her and her son from the threat of the red car's owner. She thanks him for his help. It's clear that Truman has feelings for her, but he can't confess them because she's still struggling to move on from her divorce from Simon. He leaves her to rest, but through the security cameras, Mickey notices a car parked outside the house. Feeling afraid, she goes out to check, only to find it's a delivery car dropping off a package for her neighbor. That night, Mickey recalls the day Casey relapsed into drug use after a full year of being clean. She had gotten so angry with Casey that she kicked her out of the house. The next day, she drops her son Thomas off at school as usual, where she meets with the school principal. The principal informs her that she hasn't paid the tuition fees, and therefore Thomas cannot continue at the school. She suggests transferring him to a more affordable school. Feeling distressed, Mickey heads to a musical instrument store to sell her instrument in order to pay the school fees. However, the store owner only offers her $2,000, even though the instrument is worth over $10,000. She reluctantly agrees, having no other option. She returns to the school and hands the money to the principal, telling her she'll try to gather the remaining fees as soon as possible. Then she takes her son and heads home. On the way, her ex-husband Simon calls and tells her that Thomas contacted him. He angrily tells her not to let Thomas call him again, as he doesn't want to see his son or her. Mickey is heartbroken and ends the call in anger. The next day, she goes to the poor neighborhood and asks around about the girls who were found dead days earlier. One of the locals tells her he saw the girl named Soon walking with his neighbor Jimmy. Mickey heads to Jimmy's workshop but finds it empty and learns that Jimmy, a former blacksmith, has been missing for some time. She begins to suspect that Jimmy might be the killer responsible for the deaths of the 3 girls. As she leaves the workshop, she's surprised to see her colleague Lavery and asks what he's doing in the neighborhood. He tells her he's also investigating the case of the 3 girls, hoping to find useful information. That evening, Truman talks to Mickey and tells her he found out that her sister Casey was involved with a drug dealer named Doc. He suggests they confront him together to ask about Casey's whereabouts. He shows her Casey's social media account, which includes a photo of her in front of a warehouse in the poor district. Mickey drops her son Thomas off at the home of her grandfather G, her mother's father, who raised her and Casey after their mother died when they were children. We learn that their mother died of a drug overdose, which made Grandpa G angry and blame Mickey's father. He kicked him out and refused to let him see the girls, choosing to raise them himself. However, he never told Mickey or her sister that he was the one who kept their father away. After that, Mickey goes to the warehouse she saw in the photo. When she arrives, the place is deserted. She searches every corner for her sister but finds nothing. Suddenly, Doc appears and points a gun at her, threatening to shoot if she moves. He takes her weapon and demands to know why she's there. She tells him she doesn't want to arrest him, she only wants to know where her sister Casey is. Doc says he hasn't seen her in a long time, but he seems to be lying, as if hiding something. Mickey retrieves her gun and runs to her car, terrified and tense. She then picks up her son from Grandpa G's bar and scolds him for taking the boy to such a place despite his young age. She takes Thomas home and they talk about family. Furthermore, she shows him photos of their relatives, except Casey, and tells him about her little sister, whom she raised after their mother died. But she no longer has a picture of her and doesn't know where she is now. The next day, Mickey meets with Truman, but doesn't tell him she visited the warehouse alone, despite promising they'd go together. They then meet a man named Winton, who tells them he saw Casey with Doc a few months ago, but she disappeared after that, and he hasn't seen her since. Mickey thanks him and heads to the police station to continue her work. There, Detective Davis shows her a surveillance video that captured the killer with the girl Soon. The killer is tall, wearing a long coat and a face covering. Mickey begins to suspect that Doc is the killer as he matches the height and build shown in the footage. She rushes back to the poor neighborhood and asks Alonzo, the store owner, to call her if he sees Doc anywhere. Then she and Truman go to Jimmy the blacksmith's house. There, someone tells them Jimmy used to work at a city workshop and owned a small boat for a delivery company. But he has been missing for a while, and no one knows where he is. They mention that he had a second phone different from the one he usually used. When asked about it, he avoided answering and wouldn't say anything. Mickey thanks her and returns home, confused, unsure whether the criminal is Jimmy or Doc. However, she leans more towards suspecting Doc, since he was involved with her sister before she vanished, and he's a known criminal and drug dealer, which makes such crimes unsurprising. She calls Detective Davis and tells him a homeless girl from the neighborhood saw the surveillance video and identified the person in it as Doc. Davis promises to investigate and verify that claim. The next day, Mickey goes to school with her son. The principal informs her that the school board has rejected Thomas's continued enrollment and that he must be transferred as soon as possible. She returns the $2,000 Mickey paid and asks her to keep it a secret, as she had saved it quietly in case the board refused. Mickey thanks her and leaves. That night, she talks to Thomas and tells him he'll be going to a new school. Thomas, showing maturity and awareness of their financial situation, tells his mother that he understands and is willing to attend a regular, more affordable school to help her out. The next day, Mickey, Thomas and Truman go to a Thanksgiving party at her aunt's house. Thomas is happy to see his family, but Mickey seems uncomfortable. It's clear she's hiding a secret from Thomas and doesn't want to see her relatives for fear that the secret will be revealed. After the party ended, Thomas told his mother that he had met a boy named Ryan, who mentioned his aunt with red hair, though he didn't say her name. Thomas asked his mother if she knew a woman with red hair because he wanted to include her photo on the family tree he was assigned to make at school. Mickey replied that she didn't know any woman with red hair and asked him not to bring up the subject again. It was clear that Mickey was deliberately hiding the truth. Thomas knew nothing about her sister Casey because the secret was about her, and she didn't want Thomas to know anything about it. After a while, they returned home and Thomas went to bed. As Mickey was about to enter the house, Doc suddenly attacked her and threatened to kill her because she had reported him to the police, who were now going to interrogate him. When Paula noticed Mickey was not focusing on their conversation, she called Truman. He heard Mickey screaming and calling for help, so he rushed to her house to save her. As soon as he arrived, Doc fled quickly. Mickey told Truman she had gone to the warehouse and met Doc there. He became angry with her for going alone and not telling him. He explained that he was only trying to help her, but she insisted on lying to him, so he left. The next day, Mickey received a report about a fire at the warehouse. She rushed there and met Paula, her sister Casey's friend, and showed her the video of the criminal, hoping she might recognize him. Mickey was shocked when Paula told her that the person in the video was a police officer who regularly visited the poor neighborhood. Mickey was stunned, as she had believed either Doc or Jimmy the blacksmith was the killer. Now, she had no idea who the criminal was or why he was doing all this. She began to suspect her ex-husband Simon, as he used to be a police detective, frequently visited the poor neighborhood and was a morally corrupt person. She called Truman to meet him and share her discovery. He agreed and met with her. She told him that she no longer suspected Doc because she had confirmed he was in prison at the time of the crimes, which meant he couldn't be the killer. At that point, she had 3 suspects: her boss Kevin, her ex-husband Simon, and Jimmy the blacksmith. Truman told her he would help her investigate to uncover the real killer. Later, Thomas went to visit Uncle Winton and asked if he had seen any police officers in the poor neighborhood recently. At the same time, Mickey was investigating the location where the criminal had been recorded. An employee at a nearby restaurant told her that the criminal had returned and destroyed the surveillance cameras. He added that a police car was nearby, but no one tried to stop him. This led to 2 possibilities. Either the criminal was a police officer, or he had powerful connections protecting him within the force. Mickey grew frustrated, as she was no closer to uncovering his identity. She then received a report about a man assaulting his wife and daughters. She quickly went to the address, only to find it was the house of her friend Colleen, who had previously told her she hadn't called the police. Mickey entered the house and saw Colleen's husband, Sean, beating her and their daughters. Mickey attacked him and stunned him with a taser until he lost consciousness. police and paramedics arrived. As Sean was being put into the police car, he told Mickey she should have arrested him long ago, claiming that he was the criminal she was looking for. Mickey noticed his nervousness and felt he was lying, that he wasn't the real killer. She sent him to the police station, then went to her grandfather's house to spend some time with him. There, she remembered how he had opposed her relationship with Simon, who was 20 years older than her, and believed he was exploiting her. Gee, always argued with Simon to protect his granddaughter, but in the end, he couldn't prevent the relationship. The next day, Mickey met with Truman and discussed the identity of the criminal. She suspected Jimmy the blacksmith, especially after discovering he worked for a shady transport company, possibly involved in drug trafficking, and may have killed the girls who refused to pay him. But Mickey faced a major challenge: the absence of any concrete evidence proving Jimmy's involvement. She changed the subject and told Truman she wouldn't have been able to do any of this without him, expressing how happy she was to have him by her side. It was clear she had started to develop feelings for him, though she didn't want to admit it just yet. On Thomas's birthday, all his school friends attended. He was surprised when his father Simon showed up to give him a gift. Thomas was overjoyed and ran to hug him, but Simon pushed him away, saying he had only come to drop off the gift and was leaving immediately. As Simon was leaving, G confronted him, angry that he had returned to his son's life. But Mickey intervened, took her grandfather, and went back to the party. They noticed that Thomas was upset because of his father's behavior, so Truman tried to comfort him and took him to play to help him forget what happened. In the evening, Mickey called Truman and told him she was going to visit the family of Moon, one of the murdered girls, to question them about their connection to Jimmy. She asked Truman to come along, but he refused, claiming he was with her, while in reality, he was secretly gambling with his friends, struggling with a gambling addiction. When Mickey arrived at Moon's house, her family told her that Moon used to study at the police academy, the same one Mickey had attended in the past. So she left and headed to the academy, searching for any clues that could help in the case. There, she saw a photo of Moon and another girl who was found murdered on the street. She recognized that her ex-husband, Simon, had been their instructor. She began to suspect that he might be the real killer and tried to understand what could have driven him to commit the crimes. The next day, she returned to the academy with Truman and showed him the photos, telling him that she suspected Simon and that she would talk to Paula, her sister's friend, to ask if the police officer she had seen was Simon. Meanwhile, Truman began gathering information about Suman to determine if he really was the killer. Mickey went to work and was informed by the police that a girl named Emily had been found with a gunshot wound, but was still alive and receiving treatment in the hospital. Mickey went to her boss and told him that Paula said the killer was a police officer. Kevin told her to stay out of the case and focus on her work, then kicked her out of his office. Despite that, Mickey insisted on continuing the investigation to find her sister Casey. She went to the hospital to visit Emily and tried to ask her who had shot her, but Emily refused to talk and seemed terrified of the killer, fearing he would come back to finish her off. A nurse came in and asked Mickey to leave, and she walked out feeling frustrated. She then went to Paula's house, and Paula's mother told her that Paula was living in a tent on the street and occasionally visited the house, but she hadn't come back in a while. Mickey reassured her and promised she would find Paula soon. On her way back, she remembered the first time she saw her sister Casey unconscious from an overdose after a fight between them. Casey had always hated Simon and saw him as someone exploiting Mickey, and Mickey was angry with her back then, thinking she was just refusing to get help, not realizing the real reasons behind her drug use. Later, Mickey met with Truman and learned from him that Simon had left his job at the academy some time ago and had moved to another city to work as a police detective, which meant he might not be the killer. They decided to keep monitoring him to be sure. At night, they met their friend, Dr. Aaron, and her husband, Detective Joe, who told them that he had been investigating Jimmy the blacksmith. He discovered a serious secret. Jimmy had worked with a Chinese shipping company that was sending him large amounts of money in exchange for transporting goods worth far less, meaning he was likely trafficking drugs for them, with the money being sent to an alternate bank account. Joe promised to update Mickey with any new findings. After that, Mickey and Truman went to spy on Simon and saw him talking to a homeless girl from the poor neighborhood. Mickey thought he was going to kill her, but he didn't do anything and just left. Truman told her that Simon was likely innocent and could have just been buying drugs or gathering information since he's a detective. But Mickey didn't believe him and remained suspicious of Simon because she believed he was a bad person. She returned home and recalled the day Casey visited her and how Simon had fought with her. He had ruined Mickey's future, making her abandon her passion for music to join the police force and support Casey through her rehab. The next day, Mickey and Truman met with Detective Mike, who told them the police had arrested the real killer. It turned out he wasn't a police officer, as Paula had said, but rather Sean, the man Mickey had previously arrested. His DNA was found on the body of the third murdered girl. No one knows the name of the third victim yet, but all evidence pointed to Sean, who was a violent man, constantly abusing his wife and daughters. It was likely that he was the one who killed the 3 girls. But Mickey interrupted him and said she wasn't convinced Sean was the killer and felt something was off about the case. When Mickey returned home, she couldn't find Thomas's nanny and suspected that he might have been kidnapped. She searched the house until she found him with her neighbor Mahone, who explained that the nanny had left due to an emergency and had asked her to stay with Thomas until Mickey returned. Mickey thanked her, but was clearly upset that the nanny had left without informing her. The next day, Mickey went to the police station to speak with Sean and question him to determine whether he was truly the killer. Sean insisted that he was the murderer, but Mickey didn't believe him and felt he had a reason for confessing. She decided to go to his house to search for evidence. Before that, she visited her colleague, Detective Lafferty, to check on him, as she hadn't seen him in a while. He told her that he didn't like his job and was considering quitting, admitting that he became a detective just to have authority, nothing more. When Mickey asked him about the girls' case, he said he was sure Sean was the real killer. He told her that he had seen Sean when the first body was found in the poor neighborhood. Sean had been standing in the street, and when Lafferty questioned him, Sean appeared nervous and claimed he hadn't seen anything. After finishing his story, Lafferty blamed himself for standing face to face with the killer and failing to recognize him. Mickey was puzzled by what he said, especially since he had shown no interest in the case from the start and hadn't tried to help her identify the killer. She began to suspect that Lafferty might be the murderer, as his physical features matched those of the man seen on the surveillance cameras, but she had no evidence. She then went to visit Pitch-On and met his wife Colleen, asking if she had noticed any strange behavior from her husband lately. Colleen replied that it was impossible for her husband to be the killer. He was a coward and weak, incapable of killing anyone, even though he was abusive to her and their daughters. Mickey then left. On her way back, she was stopped by a homeless girl named Nicole, who asked to speak with her privately. Mickey followed her, but sensed that something was wrong. Suddenly, Nicole and a group of girls attacked her and beat her until she lost consciousness. At that moment, Doug, the drug dealer, arrived and rushed her to the hospital. When Mickey woke up, she didn't remember what happened or who had brought her there. She took a 1-week leave from work to rest, as she had injuries all over her body, and decided to use the time to celebrate Christmas with her son, Thomas. During that time, Truman was with them, and Mickey was surprised when he gave her a musical instrument as a gift, replacing the one she had sold to pay her school tuition. She was touched and cried with joy, finally confessing her love for him. Truman returned the sentiment, and they decided to be together. The next day, Mickey visits her grandfather, G, and recalls her childhood memories with him. She used to write letters to her sister, Casey, and hide them in the wardrobe to share things they didn't want their grandfather to know. She had once asked Casey to write letters back to her as well. In the present, Mickey goes up to her room and opens the wardrobe, only to be shocked to find letters from her father. She is stunned because she had believed her father was dead, as her grandfather had told her. She confronts G and asks if her father is still alive. G confesses that his name is Bob, that he is indeed alive, and that he had lied to protect her and her sister because their father was the reason their mother died. Mickey becomes furious with her grandfather, accusing him of ruining her life, saying she grew up without parents because of him. She takes her son and leaves. The next day, while driving, Mickey notices a red car parked in front of a house, the same car her sister Casey got into before she disappeared. Mickey follows it to a house and knocks on the door, only to be stunned when Casey herself opens it. Casey slams the door in her face and refuses to talk. At that moment, their father, Bob, opens the door. Mickey is shocked to see him after all these years since their mother's death. Bob tells her he had tried to contact her and Casey to invite them to live with him, but G always prevented it. He reveals that Casey had been in contact with him and had recently asked him to take her away from the poor neighborhood because she was pregnant and wanted to stay away from drugs for the baby's sake. She had locked herself up in Bob's warehouse to recover and had been living with him ever since. However, she refuses to talk to Mitunki because of a past issue between them that she doesn't want to discuss. Mickey is overjoyed to see her father after all these years and relieved that her sister is safe. She decides to continue investigating the case of the 3 murdered girls, even though her initial motivation was to find Casey. She bids her father farewell, telling him she's happy they reconnected. On her way home, she receives a call from Dr. Aaron, asking her to come urgently to the morgue because there's a new body of a homeless girl. Mickey rushes there and is shocked to see the body belongs to Polly, Casey's closest friend. She is enraged when the doctor tells her it was an overdose and there's no evidence of murder. Mickey rejects that explanation and is convinced Polly was killed just like the other 3 girls. She now believes that Sean is not the real killer since Polly was murdered while he was still in prison. She rushes to her boyfriend Truman and tells him everything. The only person who knows Polly's real name is her boss Kevin, because she had told him she identified the killer after seeing footage from the surveillance cameras. Meanwhile, Mickey is under extreme stress because she can't uncover the killer's identity. To ease the tension, she changes the subject and confesses a secret she had kept for years. Her sister Casey had given birth to a baby boy years ago, but due to her addiction, she was deemed unfit to raise him. Mickey took the baby in, raised him herself, and became his real mother without telling him that Casey is his biological mother. That boy is Thomas. Over the years, Mickey had tried to help Casey recover from addiction while keeping her away from Thomas to protect the secret. She cut ties with her family, fearing they might reveal the truth. As Mickey finishes her confession, she breaks down in tears, feeling guilty for depriving Thomas of his real mother. Truman comforts her, assuring her she did the right thing because Casey wasn't fit to raise him at the time. The next day, Mickey goes to interrogate her ex-husband Simon to determine whether he could be the killer. He tells her he was out of town with his wife during the first 2 murders. She apologizes but remains anxious as everyone she suspects turns out to be innocent. Later, a body is found in the sea, and Mickey is shocked to discover it's the blacksmith Jimmy, whom she had suspected. It turns out he had been shot a month ago and dumped in the sea, confirming he wasn't involved in the murders. He was actually killed by the real murderer. This is confirmed when the previously unconscious girl who was shot is found near the same spot. Mickey asks Truman to visit the company where Jimmy worked to inquire about his connection to a Chinese transport company that had sent him large sums of money. The next day, Mickey attends Paulie's funeral and sees her now recovered sister Casey. Mickey tries to talk to her, hoping to mend their relationship, but Casey refuses and leaves. Mickey breaks down, devastated by the thought of losing her beloved sister again. That evening, Mickey hears a sound at her door and is surprised to see Casey standing there. Casey tells her she was the one who placed their father's letters in the wardrobe to show he was alive. She says she still loves Mickey despite everything, and explains that she hated Simon because he took advantage of Mickey's youth. She resents that Mickey didn't trust her, especially when she was trying to recover from addiction and just needed support. But instead, Mickey took her son away from her. Casey assures Mickey she won't tell Thomas the truth to avoid destroying his life. She says she'll leave him for Mickey to raise, especially now that she's pregnant with a girl she plans to raise herself, as she's now legally fit to do so. Changing the subject, Casey asks Mickey if she's found the killer. Mickey says she had suspected Jimmy, but they found his body with a phone in his pocket that had a message from a girl named Melissa. Casey says she knows this girl from her life in the poor neighborhood and that she must meet her alone because Melissa won't talk to the police for fear of being arrested. Mickey agrees on the condition that Casey stays in contact during the meeting. The next day, Casey goes to an abandoned area of the city and finds a group of homeless people doing drugs. Among them is Emily, the girl from the hospital, who turns out to be males. Meanwhile, Mickey and Truman are watching from the car. Truman expresses concern about the danger, but Mickey insists on continuing alone. Mickey searches for her sister and finds the abandoned place. There, she sees Casey sitting on the ground, terrified. Casey tells her that Melissa spoke to her and revealed the killer is Truman. Mickey is shocked and refuses to believe her boyfriend is the murderer. She takes Casey home to rest and decides to monitor Truman. She sees him leaving home with a strange bag and follows him to an abandoned building in the poor neighborhood. Inside, a girl is lying on the floor in pain. Truman pulls out a syringe from the bag, and just as he is about to inject her, Mickey bursts in and points her gun at him. Truman calmly explains that the girl is his cousin's daughter and that he is caring for her because she is ill. Mickey is stunned, apologizes, but Truman refuses her apology. He calls an ambulance and tells her he never wants to see her again. Mickey returns home and confronts Casey, blaming her for causing her to lose Truman. She tells her Truman is not the killer, but Casey insists that Melissa said the real killer is Mickey's partner at work. That's when Mickey realizes it must be Detective Lafferty. It turns out Casey, Doug, and Melissa were helping Mickey and had lured Lafferty to that location. Mickey discovers that the first body she found, the red-haired girl, was Emilia, Melissa's sister. Mickey thanks them and tells them to escape before the police arrive. She then turns herself in. During the investigation, she explains why she shot Lafferty. Once the truth comes out, she is released. But Kevin remains in his position due to lack of evidence linking him to the crimes. Mickey decides to resign from the police force, knowing Kevin won't stop until he gets revenge. Eventually, her life improves, Casey moves back in, and gives birth to a beautiful baby girl. Together, they raise her. One day, Mickey visits Truman and tries to reconcile, apologizing for suspecting him. But he tells her she pointed a gun at him and that he can never trust her again. He asks her to stay out of his life, and thus the series ends.